regular meeting, January 25, 2022. Due to the COVID-19, this will be both a physical meeting location and a virtual meeting per Washington Proclamation 20-28. Meeting may be viewed live via YouTube. To leave a public comment that will be made part of the meeting record, please call and leave a message at 360-279-4512. Once again, that number is 360-279-4512. First item on the agenda this evening is roll call. Let the record show that all commissioners are present except Commissioner Scheit. I'd like to take the time at this moment to welcome our newest Commissioner, Andy Plumley. Welcome. He is joining us remotely this evening. Second item on the agenda this evening is the approval of the minutes of November 23rd, 2021. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve the minutes from the November 23rd, 2021 meeting.
A second?
I will second.
I have a second. All in favor? Aye.
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 All opposed? Same sign. Motion passes. The third item on the agenda is the public comment, and this is where we allow time for folks to make comment on agenda items or items other than on the agenda. I've been told there is no public comment this evening, either on the agenda or otherwise. So having said that, I'll close that part of our agenda. Part 4 is the public meetings and hearings. And the first item this evening is the 2022 Comprehensive Plan docket. And this is a public hearing. And before I turn it over to Senior Planner Kat Kamak, I will open the public hearing. It is now open. Kat, you're on now.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, Kat Kamak, Senior Planner with the Development Services Department. I'm here to present the 2022 Comprehensive Plan docket. So what this docket is a kind of an agenda for the amendments moving into 2022. And I have a short slideshow. I'll share my screen. So I hope everybody can see that. And I'll just go with it in the current format. I just have a few slides to go over kind of what we're trying to cover today. So the comprehensive plan process is codified in our municipal code under Chapter 1815. And one of the reasons we have it codified is because the RCWs say that you should amend your plan no more than once a year. And this is primarily done so that a process can be generated and channeled, and you could have a predictable process every year amending the plan, and that when people want to have public participation or want to be involved in it, they know when to get involved. So that's why it's codified in our code. So the process starts with notices going out to the public in October and November of every year. We have a deadline of December 1st for sponsored amendments. Sponsored amendments are land use changes. So if somebody wants to go from having, let's say, a residential designation to a commercial designation, they may have to do a land use change first before they change their zoning. And they'd have to do it through the comprehensive plan. So we give a chance for people to make applications every year, and the deadline for that is December 1st. And then once we get past that date, we start to form a docket for the following year. The Planning Commission reviews it in January, which is what you're doing right now, and then forwards the docket to the City Council, which they review and approve in March. And then from April to August, we have public discussions at the Planning Commission about most of the topics that's on the docket. And then when we get into September, October, we start the notification. We have to determine what we're going to change that year. And so it takes some time for notifications and SEPA process to happen. So we start that process in September and October. And when we get into the November and December last part of the year, we start to hold the formal hearings and council action. So graphically, if you kind of look at it, the beginning of the year, you're looking at the docket review and adoption. You have a short window here, about 4.5 months, to kind of talk about the project and make substantial progress so that you can determine what kind of changes you want to consider for that year. You make all the state notifications and SEPA determinations during this time, and then you get into the adoption process. And while you're in this adoption process, the next year's amendments are already starting. So that's kind of the cycle that we go through with the comprehensive plan amendments. So what's tracking for 2022 docket? We have some of the items that were on last year's docket that are rolling into this year, just because they are larger projects and it's hard to complete them within a certain amount of time. And some of these projects have multiple strategies to them, so you kind of keep them open so that you can continue to keep working on them. So housing element, this year we'll be having some implementation on the housing element from the action plan. And I think we're getting some consultant help with that this year as well. So you'll hear more about that going into 2022. So we have that item on the docket. The JPA UGA discussions are still open with Island County. And so that is a long process. We don't know what kind of amendment will come out of this discussion, but we're tracking it in the comprehensive plan docket so that if there are any changes, then we can handle it there. We'll have the transportation element open so that we can do the active transportation plan. So this active transportation plan is going through this year because the city was awarded some grant money from the Regional Transportation Planning Organization to do an active transportation plan. And it was a great opportunity to do that. We'll cover that this year. This will look at a lot of our existing right-of-ways and determine how to make it safe for pedestrians and other transportation modes, and try and develop a list of projects that we can do economically within the right-of-way, like restriping and things like that, and establish the major networks in the city to make those things convenient. So that is on the plate this year. So we'll be doing the capital improvements plan. This is something that we do every year. We look at that. It's a very dynamic document, and the changes for the city. There are many changes that we go through every year, so we'll keep an eye on that. The land use element, this is being opened this year to make some changes and corrections to our future land use map. So the future land use map is sort of a policy map that establishes all the zoning districts. Just to give you a little history, before 2016, we had our land use map and zoning map on a 1-to-1 ratio. So we have, I think, about 16 or 17 zoning classifications, and we had the same number of land use classifications. So if anybody on their land wanted to make some changes, it was almost a 2-year process. They had to change the land use, and then they had to change the zoning. So when we went through the 2016 major update, we simplified the land use map. We brought the land uses down to 7 or 8 categories. And under those categories, we had all the zoning classifications. So in that process of changing the map and so on, there are some few anomalies that I think were created, and we thought those are mostly corrections. We should just kind of align them with the current uses on the land. And so we'll have a discussion on that, and part of that I've just listed some of the topics we can discuss. Some of that is the planned residential estate. And this is properties that's usually in the UGA that is going to be annexed into the city, and kind of what kind of density they come in. So we need to do some corrections there. We can talk about the planned industrial park and planned business park designation. These are 2 zoning designations that we have in the city that we'll talk about their usefulness in the entire development and land use section, and see if we can simplify that and without making much impacts to existing uses. So we can talk about it. It's always good to simplify your development codes so that it's easy to understand and administer. And again, I said there are some land use anomalies. One of them is the North Whidbey Fire Station. It's designated as residential, should probably be public facilities. And so we'll kind of look at some of those things that don't match up with some of the things on the ground. Sponsored amendments, we didn't have any applications in this year, so now that we don't have any on the docket. So the timeline for how the docket moves through the process, so we'll have the public hearing here in January. We'll touch base with the city council at their February workshop, and then go to the hearing at their March meeting. And then, once the docket gets approved, the process for that will have discussions all throughout 2022. And then we'll come back again through the approval process like I showed on the calendar. So with that, I will end my presentation. The recommendation is for the Planning Commission to forward the proposed docket to the City Council with your recommendation for approval. And I will be happy to answer any questions or thoughts that you may have on it. I will stop sharing my screen right now. And back to you, Chair, for the hearing.
Thank you, CAC. Any questions for CAC? Concerns?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. The audio cut off.
Oh, I just asked for the commissioners to make comment and/or question you, and I haven't gotten any response so far. Anyone?
I have none.
If not, then I'll call for a motion.
I'll make the recommendation to recommend that the City Council approve the 2022 Comprehensive Plan Amendment docket item as presented.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Recommendation passes. At this time, I'll close the public hearing. The next item this evening is dimensional standards. It's a public meeting going to be brought to us by Associate Planner Ray Lindenberg. Ray, you there?
I am here. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Good deal. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission. This is going to be a pretty brief introduction to process that we're going to be going through to take a look at our dimensional standards within the residential zoning ordinance. And pretty much what we have is, as a quick definition or even a quick introduction to the introduction, is our dimensional standards are going to be your lot sizes, your setbacks, and your lot coverage standards that are required in each zone district. And so each of the R1 through R4 zone districts have slightly different standards for those. And so we're going to take a look at what our code says and what some other peer cities say, and maybe make some recommendations for changes to allow for greater flexibility in development, and to hopefully kind of spur some new development and some new subdivisions and residential construction. So I'm going to go ahead and share the screen here and start a little presentation for you. Okay, as I said, this is an introduction to our residential dimensional standards. Now, this is brought forth by our Housing Action Plan, the previous adoption from June of last year. There were 20 recommended actions within that plan, and the City Council has told us essentially to start implementing some of those recommendations. To that end, Dennis Lefevre, one of our senior planners, applied for some grant funding, and so we got some funding to work on some of these projects essentially. And so we're going to start moving forward with some of the kind of low-hanging fruit. This is something that we've discussed as planners for quite some time, and other more important and kind of pressing matters came before us. So we're going to move forward with this one now and take a look at some of those standards for residential development. Now, two of the recommended actions that were within the HAP, the Housing Action Plan, were the reduction of minimum lot sizes and the updating of bulk regulations to encourage missing middle housing. And what missing middle housing is essentially those duplex to small apartment buildings, row houses, things like that, that are not single family and not big apartment complexes or taller apartment buildings. It is one of those things that has been kind of recognized by the planning profession and housing people, that that missing middle, in quotes, is a good way of providing of more affordable housing, and also to provide workforce housing and just an increase in numbers, so that the rising tide lifts all boats, except in this case we're trying to lower those prices, so hopefully the rising tide will lower prices. And so that's what two of the things that we're looking at. In this actual grant objective, and you saw in your packet there the deliverables, we're combining those two things together because they're very intertwined in our code. And so there are a couple of different actions within that grant objective. Action A being review the existing residential minimum lot sizes and the dimensional standards, which are your lot coverage, setback, and lot width. The second one being identifying alternatives to existing standards, and then the third being to ensure consistency with our comprehensive plan and any other department and state requirements there might be out there. So looking at the first one, Action A, reviewing those existing minimum lot sizes and dimensional standards. We have, like I said, in our R1 through R4 zone districts, the dimensional standards can be found within the section entitled Density Provisions for each of those zone districts. Now, this is a chart or a table that kind of boils down those numbers into a easy to read and compare format. As you can see, there are minimum lot sizes range from 6,000 to 7,200 square feet, depending on your zone district. Maximum lot coverage is 35 to 45% typically. And in your setbacks, F is front, rear, or R is rear, and inside are the two sides on the property there. And so your typical R1 zone district is going to be 20 foot setback in the front, 20 in the rear, 12 on one side and 5 on the other. And that's how all of those formats go there. And then your minimum lot width of 60 feet is kind of standard as well, until you get into that R4 district, which is a little bit larger. Now, one of the other process that we're going to go through here is to identify alternatives to existing dimensional standards. And the way we did that is by surveying other peer cities. And I define our peer cities by cities in the state of Washington that are approximately the same size, but are kind of a variety of different types of cities. You have suburbs, you have small towns kind of off to themselves, you have more urban type areas. So the peer cities that we've identified and used in the past for other projects as well are Burlington, Covington, Ellensburg, Maple Valley, Monroe, Moses Lake, Mount Vernon, Port Townsend, and SeaTac. And like I said, we're trying to get a little bit of a variety here. So we went through, not just the cities that are in our immediate vicinity. We had Anacortes on there, but their code is a little bit hard to kind of pin down from a easy to review and compare situations. So we left them off, to be honest. We might have to bring them back in, but to be perfectly honest, the information that we got from these 9 cities does show a pretty clear trend. And that trend is that most cities are having much smaller minimum lot sizes, much smaller minimum widths, and smaller setbacks as well, especially on the sides. So just taking a look at some of these peer cities again, you can see Covington in particular has minimum lot sizes of 2,500 square feet throughout their zone districts. Burlington has lot sizes down to 3,000 square feet. Ellensburg has lot sizes that conform to the density standards, and I'll touch back on that in a minute. Maple Valley has no minimum lot size, neither does Monroe. Moses Lake has minimum lot sizes that are more comparable with ours at 6,600 and 7,700. They also have kind of a large lot, almost 3/4 acre lot size as well. Sorry, that one's a little bit smaller. Mount Vernon goes down to 4,500 square feet in some of their zone districts. Port Townsend goes down to 3,000 square feet. SeaTac actually has a zone that has 900 square foot minimum lot size as well as 1,800. So they have much smaller lot sizes. The interesting thing is here, and as I mentioned, I would circle back to it, is Ellensburg, is that their zoning code specifically states that lot sizes are to conform to density standards. And you can see that in that first column, we have the density standards. And the city of Oak Harbor has density standards as well. Typically, you have your R1 zone, like in Covington, has a minimum of 1 unit per acre. And so that's a kind of easy standard to meet, right? You go up to the R18 and they have R18 units to 24 units per acre, but all of those minimum lot sizes are the same. So it's not that they're not kind of plugging in Lego pieces of lot sizes. They're just saying how many units you have to get into a certain area. And so when we take a look at our zoning code, again, we go back to these minimum lot sizes, lot coverages, lot widths, and then maybe a different way of thinking about it is to go back to that density of units per acre. Because like I said, we do have this already within our code, and it's set forth by our comprehensive plan, that the R1 zone district is 3 to 6 units per acre, R2 is 3 to 12, R3 6 to 16, and our most dense is 12 to 22 units per acre. So it starts to kind of reduce the impact or the importance of the minimum lot size. That perhaps what we can do is approach this from more of a standpoint like we do when there is a critical area or a wetland on a site, is to allow that density and reduce the impact, like I said, of the minimum lot size. If, for instance, you have a 1 acre parcel and half of it is a wetland area or wetland buffer, you're still allowed to do 3 to 6 units per acre on that parcel. You would just do it in a half an acre instead. And so that's a way of preserving some of those, critical areas, wetlands, things like that. But it's also a way of preserving just open space. If somebody wanted to develop that way, is to have a large common area or a garden area or just an open space, and still provide housing within that area at the same density. And so that's what some of those other zoning ordinances, for instance, in Ellensburg, allow a little bit of flexibility from that standpoint. So the last thing that we're going to take a look at in this part of the process is to ensure consistency with our comprehensive plan and other department requirements. And like I said, that density standard is kind of the key thing there. We have to follow along with that, or we have to go back and look at changing the comp plan. That's always a possibility as well. It's obviously a more involved process, but it's something that could be done in the future if we needed to. So, sorry. Next steps on that is to conduct our public outreach. Pretty much what we're going to do is take this information that I've just presented to you, put it together and present it to the public, along with some ideas for how things could be changed. And the thing is about it is, as we've noted before, we've done many recent changes to our code. We're making changes to the code and how it's presented. We're not necessarily making changes to the code in ways that are going to affect the physical built environment. For instance, we're not saying that we're going to remove our minimum lot sizes and it's going to be willy-nilly density everywhere. People can build apartment buildings on small properties. There's still that density standard. And so if we do go through and say, for instance, we reduce our minimum lot size down to 2,000 square feet, just hypothetically, they would still have to meet the standard of 3 to 6 units per acre if they were doing an R1 zone district. They could just do smaller lots without having to go through the process of getting PRD, planned residential development done, and some of those things. So it streamlines the process, makes development a little bit easier, and I think that's something that we're kind of headed towards, is trying to allow for creative designs and easier development to make sure that we are keeping up with our housing needs, especially affordable housing. The second step after the public outreach will be a city council workshop. It'll probably happen about the same time. We'll be working on it kind of in the background here. You'll hear about it and see it coming out. But we'll be working back here in our office on all this information, and also preparing those notices, SEPA checklists, all this stuff that goes along with all the paperwork that we have to do to meet the requirements of the process itself. And I will be drafting an ordinance and presenting that to both the Planning Commission and City Council. Those are kind of our next 4 steps. Obviously, there's steps beyond that. But like I said, this is an introduction. Our goal is to be done with this project by June. And so pretty much what we're doing here is introducing this to you, discussing some of the concepts. If you have any ideas or concerns that you'd like to share with us now, please do so. Otherwise, I'm always available either by phone or by email. If you have any comments, concerns, questions, definitely get in touch. We're not asking for any formal action tonight. This is just a presentation on a hearing or anything. So with that, I'm going to wrap up my presentation and ask if you have any questions or want to discuss or share anything.
Bruce, I believe you have comment.
Yes, Mr. Lindenberg, these new developments with what we got stipulated here in our code. I've just seen the most recent development where they put in the retention ponds that are now taking place in the 2 developments. One's on Swantown and one is on Fairway Point, Fort Nugent. Will
Yes.
these properties, if they're infill like this, require those retention ponds?
Yes, they do. They are part of the stormwater management that's found in the state requirements for stormwater management. I'm repeating myself, but yes, they are required to manage and retain and treat the water that comes off of the land, any kind of runoff that we have. So yeah, those are required. Sometimes they do it in an open retention pond like that. Sometimes they're done underground. McKinney Place over on Southeast 3rd has underground retention. So you're not going to see that, but there is stormwater facility on that site. You're just not seeing it from above. So yeah, those are required for all developments, and that goes for any of your commercial or residential developments as well.
And parking requirements would be the same?
Yeah, we're not looking at changing any kind of parking requirements with this. This is going to be entirely dimensional standards. And the key thing here is that anytime we look at reducing minimum lot sizes, other things are going to have to change. And that's why when we talk about The two different steps of this process, one being reducing the minimum lot sizes and the other looking at the bulk and dimensional standards, is anytime we reduce those lot sizes down, we're going to have to adjust the maximum coverage, because otherwise, if you have 35% on a 7,200 square foot lot versus 35% on a 4,000 square foot lot, that's going to make significant changes to what can be built on it. So we're going to have to adjust those. We're going to look at adjusting side yard setbacks, possibly front and rear yard setbacks as well. Because what we're doing right now is we're approving a lot of subdivisions through the PRD process. They're asking for reductions in setbacks. And a lot of those are kind of straightforward, basic, why are we here kind of questions. Like having a 5-foot side yard setback is something that, if you look at the east side of town over here, all of the houses, have a 5-foot side yard setback. It meets the fire code, it meets the needs of the residents. And if it doesn't, it's one of those things that we can let the market decide a little bit. If the market doesn't like to have, small side yard setbacks, then builders are certainly welcome to, build the lots a little bit larger to allow more space in between the homes, and the market can decide some of those things. But if we allow the flexibility, then we can have a little bit greater creativity in the design.
We'll talk about that more as we go. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions, concerns?
I thank you for your time, Mr. Lindenberg. I would just say that I support the idea of reducing the minimum lot size and the maximum building coverage to help with development.
Thank you.
Christie? Andy?
Nothing, sir.
Okay, then, I guess that kind of wraps that up for now. We'll be revisiting that soon, I'm sure. The next item, I believe our Development Service Director, David Cool, is going to speak to us about the monthly report that we're instituted a few months ago. David?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. As you remember, several months ago, we decided to go ahead and come forward with a monthly report to give you updates on what the city council's doing, what the building division's doing, what the planning division's doing, rather than go in the back room and have pre-meetings and talk about a lot of detail. We thought we would be transparent, come out here and present everything we're doing in the department. So I'll give you a few minutes to pull up the monthly report if you have it up already. The first item on the agenda is the council action update. And so I wanted to let you know that tentatively we have the mayor of Langley coming up to present to the city council housing game plans. And this is countywide, so he's advocating for affordable housing countywide and just wanted to come to our city council and have a conversation. So that would be sometime in February. Also coming up soon is the Evelyn and Quintero annexation, which is on Lorland Lane. That's over in the Hillcrest Water District, and that's coming up to council on February 1st, and will be heard tomorrow afternoon in a workshop at the city council. So if you'd like to follow that, that's a one-lot annexation. Current planning, number 2, is North Whidbey Fire District, number 25. If you're familiar with them, they're contemplating a new building at the corner of Crosby and Heller. There's a power substation at the corner, and then right behind them is where North Whidbey Fire has been for a long time. So we went out and met them at the site and talked about some of their goals of providing more housing for the firefighters. So that could be coming our way. It's in the city, so we'll be processing their permits. Number 3, building. I skipped the site plan approval for U-Haul. So that site plan has been approved. And as you can tell, if you've driven by there lately on Highway 20, they've been constructing a lot of work out there. The next item, building, we've processed 10 building permits so far, and we have 3 more to go. So we've been working real hard to get their permits out the door. The size ranges from 9,900 square feet to 11,700, right in that range. So decent-sized storage buildings. There will be a 5,000 square foot retail building there. And there's also a road in the back that they'll be accessing the property. And we're working with the developer right now on a cost-sharing agreement for that road. What we're doing is we're closing the access from Highway 20, and that's for safety, and putting in a road and a cost-sharing agreement in the back. And so we've met internally to follow our budget requirements, which we're going to do, and that's moving forward. Currently, it's in design review with our engineering department. Number 4, long-range planning. We've been developing a work program for next year for zoning ordinance amendments, and you'll see those in our next item where I've listed those in the annual report. So we'll talk about that in a minute. The density and dimension standards we just talked about, and so that's a key thing of the housing goals that we have set forth. Number 5, administrative. Our new electronic permitting system is going to be testing in February, and then we'll go live in March. And the firm that's helping us with that is Davenport, and they'll be sticking around until April to help us with any bugs that we have with our new permitting software. We anticipate that'll go on for quite a long time, trying to get used to the new system and making changes throughout the course of 2022. But that's a real exciting development for us. I've talked about that before, and being able to centrally track everything that comes through our department is huge in terms of the ability for us to provide customer service to people. Also, the new permit coordinator position, Lisa Beebe used to be in that position for 20 years, and she's moved on to private business, and so we now have a new person to take that job, someone that comes from the county. So we're really excited to have her. And her name is Patty O'Mahony, and she's worked in the assessor's office for many years. So she'll bring that whole aspect of experience to us from the assessor's world. And they certainly link together with the building departments as assessors. Also, Serendipity Lane, which I don't know if I've spent any time talking about that, but that's a trail that'll be leading from Pioneer down to Bayshore. That's moving forward. And if I haven't spent time with you talking about it, I'll certainly bring a presentation to show you next time if you're interested in that. So the next meeting is February 22nd. So just want to make sure we're all aware of that. And so I'm available for any questions you may have on the monthly report.
Commissioners, any questions or comments about the monthly report? Thank you, David. And guess what, David? You're up again. The Planning Commission Annual Report to the City Council. This is also a public meeting, also brought to us by David Cool. David?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. This is the annual report that we do every year, and this is an annual report of the Planning Commission. So this is the work that you've achieved over the last year, and if you've had a chance to review it, we're available for any questions you might have, but it's basically the exact same game plan that you followed throughout the year. So we have all the various issues you've touched in terms of public hearings and public meetings. You can tell that the picture on the very front of this report was an old picture of the windmill in town, so that's a classic. CAC did that one, and that's just carried forward with us in all of our annual reports. And so as you can tell, it says Annual Report 2021, and so this is an annual report of last year. So the planning commissioners that are listed on here on the report are the commissioners who were in place in 2021. So there's several categories that you can see through there, and plenty of gaps so you can write notes. The first section is a summary of the accomplishments of the Planning Commission, and on page 4 is where that all starts. You adopted the 2020 Comprehensive Plan amendments. You adopted the 2021 Comprehensive Plan docket. And you adopted the Housing Action Plan. So those were three big long-range planning documents that you were able to successfully get through. Also, the Shoreline Master Plan, something that was worked on by Dennis Lefevre for 2 years to get that through the process. That was a big deal to get that finished, and congratulations for getting that through the process. So those are some big long-range planning projects that were done. We also completed various ordinances, repealing and replacing certain chapters. The chapter on model homes was one we needed to fix. We had a developer who wanted some changes, and if you remember, that was the change we made to allow infrastructure to go in at the same time the model homes were being built. So that was innovative a process to try and get through. As you remember, Ray worked on the standards for mixed-use development, horizontal mixed use, as well as the matrix that he did in our zoning ordinance. So that was a big accomplishment for us. And we did some other cleanup activities in the code. So that was helpful for us to gain better understanding of our code by cleaning up certain sections. Scrolling down to page 6, we're moving forward now to something new, which is the 2022 proposed work program. In the past, we used a bar chart to show the future things we're working on. We decided just to leave it with descriptive items so you can read exactly what it is we want to work on next year. The 2022 Comprehensive Plan docket that you just talked about. The 2022 Comprehensive Plan amendments, those also will move forward. And the Housing Action Plan. That was something that has the whole implementation plan of various steps for us to take moving forward to provide more affordable housing. One of those was the one Ray just talked about, which was density and dimension standards. But we have others that we want to be talking about throughout the year. And so the staff will be bringing those back to you. Something that I added here that's a little bit innovative you didn't used to do, but I thought it'd be important for you to see. Down below that on page 6 is the 2022 potential code changes. And that's a list of the things that we as staff would like to work on to try and bring back in front of you. And so it's an aggressive program, a lot of items on there, but these are items that need to be done. The first one was requested by Councilman Wiesner, and that was to review the automatic fee increase that's tied to the CPI. So in our code, there's a trigger that if CPI goes up by 7%, which it just did, our fees are required to go up by 7%. So we'll bring back that to the council and yourself to analyze our fee schedule and just take a little closer look at our fees. Another request we have is a 72-hour time limit for RVs, boats, and commercial vehicles to be stored on public streets. And obviously, we'll get into the detail of these items as we go forward, but there was a request for us to limit how long these boats and campers can be parked on the street. Third bullet down, existing buildings code, as well as the fourth bullet down, the fire code. A couple of small adjustments we'd like to make to these codes. One of them would require sprinklers in townhomes. 2 more CUPs, so I've batched a couple of these together. The conditional use permit process for event facilities such as the motocross track that's here in town. An attempt to legalize it, if possible, is something to be discussed. Also, conditional use permits to allow one property owner to take over the use from a prior property owner. So, for example, we had a church that was in one location. The location didn't change, but somebody else came in to run the church. By code, we have to go back through a conditional use permit process, and that seems superfluous to us. So we decided, well, why not just push forward doing it by site? So those are updates we can batch together for conditional use permits, for fire codes, and other things to make it more efficient. So we'll be bringing those back to you very soon. As you can see down below that, we have 3 housing items, and that came directly out of the housing plan. And so those are items we would like to move forward. I think Ray kind of touched on some of that, putting R2 and R3 in the undeveloped R1 areas, touching a little bit on the accessory dwelling units, and even talking about tiny homes. Other housing issues that we found, raising the SEPA exemption levels. By state law, we've been allowed to raise those exemption levels for a long time. It's just never been done, so we think that should be done. But we'll bring that back to you to get your input on that. And so that will probably be later this year when we bring that item back to you. Setback encroachments for bay windows, chimneys, and architectural features. You'd think that would be something we have in our code, but it's not. So it would just help for interpretation to have those kinds of things spelled out. Other items, the small cell fee ordinance. Dennis Lefevre was here a couple years ago. I think he did small cells for communications. The one recommendation that came out of that was to do a fee schedule for that, and that just hasn't been done yet. So we'll try and catch up with that. Dennis will also take on the critical areas ordinance. That came out of the shoreline master plan, where we need to change our critical areas ordinance for other reasons as well. Here's a new one, temporary gravel roads and parking lots and for parks over a certain size. So let's say you might have a 75-acre park up in the north part of town, and you can't fund the whole thing at once, but you need to get around in it. And so we'll come back with a proposal to take a look at putting in some gravel roads and some gravel parking lots, temporary, until we can phase in asphalt parking lots. So we're trying to be innovative and creative and trying to help the city meet its goals. Second to the last bullet, accessory dwelling units. We'll talk about cleaning that up a little bit. And then housekeeping issues as well. That's where we batch together a number of small things that need to be fixed. So as I said, it'll keep us busy through the year, and we'll keep the Planning Commission busy too. So we're really excited to have Andy on board for a new member, and certainly we encourage all of you to engage with him to answer any questions you might have. One more item. I actually have two. These are just listing on page 7 of other things that we do, and it's not a complete list, but we do annexations, we do Windjammer Park planning, shoreline permits, we do all the building department, we do all that, all the plan review and permitting and inspections. Recently, we started doing development agreements, and those are contracts with private property owners to do development. Site plans, commercial site plans for commercial and residential. Subdivisions, obviously, and then, of course, the new permit system that I talked about earlier. There is one other item that I'd like to, actually, this, if we look at page 9, this is an area where you can discuss tonight any recommendations you want to move forward to our city council. So anything that you see, maybe you see we're processing a certain kind of a land use with a conditional use permit, and you think it should just be allowed by right, or anything else you see, this is your chance to forward a recommendation to council. And then there's one other item that is new that we haven't done before, but I think it's important for you to see. On page 11, obviously, all the rundown of everything you did over the course of the last year is all there. And then if you get down to page 16, the code enforcement report is there. Excuse me. So there's an annual report done by our code enforcement officer, Ray Helzy, and you can see all the different types of code enforcement complaints that he handles. He handles building code, fences, address issues, illicit discharge of water, noise complaints, storage complaints. You can see off to the right, there's the number of complaints in each category that he's addressed in the last year. So it looks like he took in 126 cases last year. And he only has, I think, 7 that were not resolved. So that's a pretty good batting average. His actual compliance ratio is 97%, which is really strong. Having worked in a lot of planning departments in my career, it's really hard to get that high a percentage. So code enforcement's a good process we use. So that's our report, and I'm available for any questions you might have.
Thank you, David. Commissioners, do we have any other questions, comments about anything?
It's obvious we accomplished quite a few things this last year, even though it doesn't necessarily seem like it. But it's always good to see, what we have gotten done, in front of us in writing, and it's not an easy thing to do. It's just time consuming, and as long as we all pull together in the same direction, it's good to see. So, good job, David.
Thank you.
Do we have a proposed council meeting where this is going to be presented?
This topic?
Yeah, the accomplishments or reports of the planning commission.
I think, when are we on council? Is that in February?
There's 2 council meetings in February. We haven't scheduled it for a specific date just yet.
It won't be the first, that's for sure. It's too early. Not enough time if it's not already on there.
Certainly no hurry, we'd just like to, get the info if and when. Any other comments?
No, we're available for any questions you might have that might pertain to what you want to advance forward to the
Sure.
city council. So if you have anything, let us know.
Pretty much cover it as the year goes on. I mean, I can't think of anything right off the top. Eric, you have anything that? Christie, can you think of anything that?
Nothing at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Well, any other comments for the good? Once again, I remind you that the next meeting will be on February 22, as David Cool shared with us earlier. Seeing no further business, the meeting is adjourned.
I think we
Oh,
actually
I'm
need
sorry.
a recommendation from you
Oh,
guys.
that's right.
Whether you'd like to forward this report as
That's right,
is, or if
that's
you'd
right,
like to
that's
make any
right.
changes.
We need a recommendation. Whether to forward the report to the city council.
I'll make a recommendation to forward the planning commission's annual report to the city council.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Recommendation passes. Thank you, Sarah, for keeping me on the straight and narrow there. There being no further business, I call the meeting adjourned.